Welcome to Food Science Peeps. In this video, I'll briefly explain about water-soluble vitamins, including their names, structures, general properties, biological functions, excess and deficiency, food sources as well as stability. Water-soluble vitamins dissolve in water. These vitamins can be stored in body but only in very limited amount. Hence, adequate daily intake of these vitamins is important. Excess intake will be excreted from body through urination. However, too much intake of water-soluble vitamins can be harmful for health. There are 9 types of water-soluble vitamins that can be found in human diet. They are vitamin B1, B2, B3, B5, B6, B7, B9, 12, and also vitamin C. In this video, we're going to look at the first 5 vitamins and we'll continue for the next 4 vitamins in the next video. Now, let's look at vitamin B1, which is also called thiamine. Thiamine consists of a substituted pyrimidine ring linked to a substituted thiazole ring by methylene bridge. Beside from existing as free thiamine, vitamin B1 also exists in various phosphorylated forms such as thiamine pyrophosphate, which is the most common biologically active form of thiamine. On the other hand, thiamine hydrochloride and thiamine mononitrate are most common forms of thiamine found in supplements as they are relatively more stable. They can also be used to produce fortified food products. Next, we're going to look at biological functions of thiamine. The main role of thiamine in our bodies is carbohydrate metabolism. It metabolizes the blood glucose to supply energy to our body parts such as brain and nervous system. It also metabolized pyruvate, which is the output of glucose metabolism. This function is also important for maintenance of smooth and skeletal muscles as well as nerve impulse transmission. Thiamine is essential to provide energy to our bodies because its derivative, the thiamine pyrophosphate, acts as the coenzyme of enzymes which are important in carbohydrates metabolism such as pyruvate dehydrogenase and alpha-ketoglutarate dehydrogenase. Apart from that, thiamine pyrophosphate also acts as coenzyme for transketolase, which is important enzyme in pentose phosphate pathway that produces DNA, RNA, and NADPH. Now, let's look at excess and deficiency of thiamine. Severe deficiency in thiamine can cause beriberi. The 2 most common types of beriberi are wet beriberi and dry beriberi. Wet beriberi occurs when deficiency of thiamine, which is important for carbohydrate metabolism, results in the accumulation of pyruvic acid and lactic acid in body tissues. This causes edema and damages blood vessels, thus potentially leads to myocardial failure and even death. On the other hand, dry beriberi occurs due to poor caloric intake and relative physical inactivity. Dry beriberi negatively affects nervous system, resulting in polyneuritis, tingling, numbness, muscle wasting, lethargy and paralysis in severe cases. Excess of thiamine normally does not cause toxicity as thiamine is water-soluble and can be excreted together with urine. However, excess intake of thiamine can cause gastric upset. Furthermore, some studies have shown that excess thiamine may contribute to tumor cell proliferation and to the development of chemotherapy resistance by tumors. Next, food sources of thiamine. We can get thiamine by consuming beef, milk, and legumes. We can also get thiamine from fortified foods such as rice, cereals, and breads. Next, stability of thiamine. Thiamine is one of the most unstable vitamin. It is very sensitive to heat, as heat treatment such pasteurization and boiling can cause significant loss of thiamine in food products. For pH, thiamine is less stable in alkaline condition compared to acidic condition, as in alkaline condition, opening of the thiazole ring will occur and yield the thiol form. Moreover, thiamine is sensitive to light and becomes unstable when exposed to ultraviolet light. Exposure to sulfating agent or sulfite preservative can destroy thiamine, as sulfite can cleave the methylene bridge between the thiazole ring and pyrimidine ring. Now, I'll talk about vitamin B2, which is also called riboflavin. Riboflavin consists of isoalloxazine ring O-flavin attached with ribitylside. Riboflavin can form flavin mononucleotide after phosphorylation. Further phosphorylation will yield flavin adenine dinucleotide. Next, biological functions of riboflavin. Riboflavin plays important role in metabolism of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats to provide energy to our bodies. Riboflavin is the main component of flavin adenine dinucleotide and flavin mononucleotide, which are important cofactors for many metabolic pathways such as citrate cycle, fatty acid metabolism and electron transport chain. Flavin adenine dinucleotide aids in electron transport by its oxidation and reduction. Besides, riboflavin also affects functioning of other nutrients. For example, riboflavin changes folate and cyanocobalamin into forms that the body can use. Apart from that, riboflavin is needed for protection of erythrocytes and other cells from oxidative stress. Research shows that body with low level of riboflavin is more likely to develop anemia. Riboflavin also reduces homocysteine levels in our blood, which is a risk factor for heart disease. Next, excess and deficiency. Inadequate intake of riboflavin can cause a riboflavinosis. Symptoms of a riboflavinosis include cracked and red lips, inflammation of mouth and tongue, angular cheilitis, mouth ulcers, sore throat, dry skin, and iron deficiency anemia. Excess of riboflavin can cause liver damage. However, toxicity occurs rarely because riboflavin is water-soluble and excess portions will be excreted from our bodies. So, toxicity will only occur when one takes overdose riboflavin supplement in oral form or injection form. Then, let's look at the food sources of riboflavin. Foods high in riboflavin include liver, dairy products, lean meat, egg, green vegetables such as broccoli and asparagus. Next, stability of riboflavin. Riboflavin is stable to heat as thermal processing such as heat sterilization, canning and cooking do not affect riboflavin contents in food products. However, riboflavin is very unstable to both visible and ultraviolet light even at room temperature. That's why foods rich riboflavin are best stored in opaque container to avoid riboflavin destruction. Apart from that, riboflavin is sensitive to alkaline conditions due to alkaline hydrolysis. Riboflavin is also slightly sensitive to acidic condition, especially at high temperature. Research shows that when heated to above 121 degrees Celsius, a more rapid destruction of riboflavin is observed at below pH 1 and above pH 5.4. Thus, we know that although riboflavin is stable to heat, but heat can increase the sensitivity of riboflavin towards pH. Moreover, riboflavin is sensitive to industrial chemical like ethylene oxide. The use of ethylene oxide in food sterilization can destroy riboflavin in the food products. Next, let's look at vitamin B3, which is also known as niacin. Another name of niacin is nicotinic acid because it is a pyridine monocarboxylic acid. Another form of niacin is nicotinamide or nicotinic acid amide. Our bodies utilize niacin to form coenzymes nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide (NAD) and nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate (NADP). Now, let's look at the biological functions. Like thiamine and riboflavin, niacin also plays a role in generating energy for our bodies. The coenzyme form of niacin, NAD, contributes to many metabolic pathways such as glycolysis, citric acid cycle and electron transport chain by donating and accepting electrons. These metabolic pathways are mostly catabolic reactions which involve redox reactions and break down nutrients into energy. On the other hand, the coenzyme NADP is involved in production of complex molecules that are necessary for cellular and metabolic processes. NADP is mostly reduced to NADPH and serves as an electron donor for reductive biosynthesis, which are anabolic reactions such as cholesterol synthesis and fatty acid chain elongation. Apart from that, some studies show that niacin has antioxidant activity and help to protect our bodies against oxidative stress. For example, niacin supplementation leads to significant decrease in lipid peroxidation, which is oxidative degradation of lipid that can cause cell and DNA damage. Now, let's look at excess and deficiency. Although it is rare to have excess niacin through diet intake, but overdose niacin supplement may lead to niacin toxicity. The symptoms include reddening of skin, itching, headache, tingling and burning. Deficiency of niacin can cause a disease called pellagra. Symptoms of pellagra include dermatitis, dementia, diarrhea, and nervous disorder which may lead to paralysis in severe cases. Pellagra can be fatal if left untreated. Patients suffering from pellagra will develop scaly and dark pigmented rash on their skin, especially when exposed to sunlight. Other symptoms of deficiency in niacin include inflammation of the mouth and tongue, vomiting, constipation and abdominal pain. Next, food sources. We can obtain niacin from various food sources. Plant-based foods such as nuts, legumes, and grains provide niacin in the form of nicotinic acid. On the other hand, animal-based foods such as beef, poultry, and fish supply niacin in the coenzyme forms. The amino acid, tryptophan, is provitamin of niacin. So, consuming food rich in tryptophan such as milk and egg also gives us niacin. Next, stability. Niacin is one of the most stable vitamins. Niacin and nicotinamide are stable to heat, thus they are resistant to most of cooking and preserving processes. Only little loss of niacin and niacinamide are shown during cooking and storage of foods. For pH, both nicotinic acid and nicotinamide are stable in the dry form and in neutral aqueous solutions. Nicotinamide can be converted to nicotinic acid by treatment with acid or alkali. Besides, niacin and nicotinamide are stable to light and air. Hence, niacin is stable in many condiments, and most of the niacin loss is due to leaching when foods rich in niacin are cooked in water. Next, let's learn about vitamin B5, which is also called pantothenic acid. Pantothenic acid is the combination of pantoic acid and beta-alanine. The free acid form of pantothenic acid is a viscous hygroscopic oil which is very chemically unstable. Salts of pantothenic acid such as sodium pantothenate and calcium pantothenate are more relatively stable. Now, let's look at biological functions of pantothenic acid. Pantothenic acid is important component of coenzyme A, which is essential for energy metabolism, as coenzyme A acts as acyl group carrier to form acetyl-CoA to enter citric acid cycle. It is also needed for biosynthesis of many other important compounds such as acetylcholine, fatty acids, and cholesterol that are involved in maintaining body wellness. Furthermore, pantothenic acid is important in production of hemoglobin, which is component of our red blood cell to transport oxygen in our bodies. Thus, it is needed to prevent anemia due to decreased synthesis of heme in our bodies. Apart from that, pantothenic acid is important for our skin health. This is because it works as a moisturizer on the skin and enhances the healing process of skin wounds. A study showed that taking pantothenic acid reduces facial acne and acne-related facial blemishes. Next, excess and deficiency. Pantothenic acid is known to be safe and not toxic in humans. However, overdose of pantothenic supplement intake can lead to gastrointestinal side effects such as diarrhea, nausea, and heartburn. Deficiency in pantothenic acid is rare as it can be found in wide variety of foods. Deficiency normally occurs in cases of severe malnutrition in developing countries. The symptoms include irritability, headache, tiredness, sleeping problems, stomach pain, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, loss of appetite, numbness, and burning of the hands and feet. Food sources of pantothenic acid. Pantothenic acid is distributed in wide variety of foods. For example, organ meats, beef, and seafoods are animal-based foods that are rich in pantothenic acid. We can also obtain pantothenic acid from plant-based foods such as broccoli, mushrooms and walnuts. Next, stability. Pantothenic acid is stable to heat in slightly acid to neutral conditions, but its stability decreases in alkaline conditions. Thermal processing such as pasteurization and sterilization result in negligible loss if there is no strong alkali. Boiling and blanching of foods can cause up to 30% loss due to leaching of water-soluble pantothenic acid into cooking water. Besides, pantothenic acid is highly sensitive to both alkali and acid. It is very unstable and is destructed at pH values below 5 and above 7, especially at high temperatures. However, pantothenic acid is stable to light as exposure to light doesn't cause significant loss of pantothenic acid. Now, let's look at vitamin B6, which is also called pyridoxine. There are 3 different natural forms of vitamin B6, namely, pyridoxal, pyridoxal and pyridoxamine. Pyridoxal is also called pyridoxine. Pyridoxal is found in plants whereas pyridoxal and pyridoxamine are found in animal as pyridoxal phosphate. Pyridoxal phosphate is the active form of vitamin B6. Now, I'll talk about the biological functions of vitamin B6. The active form of vitamin B6, pyridoxal phosphate, function as a coenzyme and is responsible for many biological functions in human bodies. It is needed for amino acid metabolism. For example, it is required by the enzymes involved in all transamination reactions, some oxalation and deamination reactions of amino acids to function properly. Besides, vitamin B6 plays an important role in nervous system health. The pyridoxal phosphate functions as a coenzyme in the synthesis of myelin and neurotransmitters such as serotonin, dopamine, and gamma-aminobutyric acid. Apart from that, vitamin B6 is needed for blood cells synthesis. Pyridoxal phosphate helps in production of hemoglobin in red blood cells, which carries oxygen throughout our bodies. Pyridoxal phosphate also helps in the binding of oxygen to hemoglobin. Another role of pyridoxal phosphate is carbohydrate metabolism. It plays a role in gluconeogenesis by supporting transamination to produce glucose from amino acids. Now, I'll talk about excess and deficiency. High amount of vitamin B6 from dietary intake is not harmful to our bodies. However, too much vitamin B6 supplement intake can cause gastrointestinal side effects such as nausea and heartburn. Besides, excess of vitamin B6 can lead to ataxia, which is a degenerative disease of nervous system. It causes lack of muscle control or coordination of voluntary movements. Other side effects due to excess in vitamin B6 include numbness, sensitive to sunlight, skin lesions, and reduced sensation of touch or high temperature. On the other hand, deficient in vitamin B6 can affect nervous system, resulting in irritability, depression, and confusion. In severe case, numbness, muscle twitching, difficulty walking may be resulted. Lack of vitamin B6 also leads to microcytic anemia due to insufficient production of normal hemoglobin in red blood cells. Next, food sources of pyridoxine. Normally, pyridoxine exists in foods as bound forms. Foods rich in pyridoxine include beef liver, fish, poultry, whole grain cereals, bread, and starchy vegetables. Next, stability. Pyridoxine is slightly sensitive to heat. It is unstable when subjected to prolonged heat treatment. Pyridoxine is sensitive to light, as light induces degradation of pyridoxine, but it depends on pH. Pyridoxine is more stable in acidic condition compared to alkaline condition. For example, pyridoxine is destroyed by ultraviolet light in neutral or alkaline solutions but not in acidic solution. Furthermore, pyridoxine is not sensitive to oxidation by air but is unstable when exposed to strong oxidizing agent like nitric oxide. The overall stability of pyridoxine depends on vitamin B6 content of food. Pyridoxal, which is found in plant, is more stable than pyridoxamine and pyridoxal, which are found in animal. We'll continue with another 4 water-soluble vitamins in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.